Often we think about career gaps. We think about someone making a choice to do a thing. But what we found, women lost their jobs.
Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we are diving into taboo topics and redefining the rules for women of color leaders. Get ready as we share the stories and amplify the voices of extraordinary women of color. From navigating workplace challenges to celebrating triumphs, on this podcast, we've got you covered. So buckle up and join us as we embark on today's empowering journey.
Welcome to the Climb Podcast, where we empower women in the pursuit of leadership and managerial roles. I'm your host, Felicia Smith, the founder of The Climb. And each week on this podcast, we take back the covers and reveal all the things that are going on in the workplace and the realities that women of color are facing, and offer honest conversations, practical insights to really help you to navigate the broken rung and to build confidence, but also to not do it alone. And so here, whether it's myself or my lovely guest that I have today, each week we want to dive into those topics. And so today, I think we have a good one, but we also have a guest that I'm super excited about. So our topic for this episode is how to tell your career story after a gap. And so we know for a lot of women of color, during this time, and particularly Black women, they're kind of feeling that reality. You know, often we think about career gaps. We think about someone making a choice to do a thing, or, hey, I took some time off to be a mom, or I took some time off to do a thing. But what we found, women lost their jobs. And so many of those women are carrying this extra load of how do they find a new role, also now with this gap that they didn't expect. And so for a lot of women who are listening, this wasn't something that was planned or it's kind of a strategic pause, but it really was a disruption. And so we want to talk a little bit about how we can help. Like, how do you help someone who is transitioning explain this on their resume, explain it in an interview? How do they position and how do they move forward without feeling like they've lost momentum? So I'm going to consider this episode a part of what we call The Climb Reset series, where we're looking to help women refocus and revamp. And I am so happy today to have our guest, Karriema Calhoun, who is an expert in resume writing and is the founder of Copy by KC. Welcome, Karriema.
Thanks for having me, Felicia.
So excited. Karriema also is an amazing advocate and former board member of The Climb. As a matter of fact, when I first started my company, Karriema was helping me do copy for my company. And I believe you did a resume review for me also.
Yes.
And so she's been in the game for a while. Karriema, I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So my name is Karriema Calhoun. Again, as Felicia mentioned, I'm the founder of Copy by KC. I help elevate brands through writing. So when you think about the resume writing services that I offer, a lot of times it could be a career move, it could be a career promotion, it could be a career gap. It could be rebranding altogether. I have helped professionals, managers, leaders, executives all over the world to revamp their resumes. And I've done this for quite some time, even before Copy by KC was a thing. I had been doing this for probably maybe it wasn't quite 10 years, but probably close to it. And really, it was during the pandemic that I had the time to sit and figure out what I wanted my business model to be. And little did I know how much demand there was out there for my services at that time. Because, of course, the pandemic made us, sit at home, do things differently, think about things differently, and definitely take a look, differently at our careers. And so that kind of birthed Copy by KC. And fast forward to 6 years later, we're navigating a lot of challenges in the job market. So there are a lot of different things that could come into play into, why gaps may happen. And in terms of what your resume should look like. I have a lot of thoughts around this topic, and there's not really a one size fits all strategy, but I will at least kind of throw out some scenarios and some examples of when to use certain things or when to do things differently, kind of depending on what the gap may be.
So you actually probably already answered like my first question when I asked about what are you seeing in the market about people navigating unexpected gaps, and you already covered the majority of those. But like, what patterns have you seen over time with resumes for people who've had gaps that stand out to you, or advice that you would give those people?
I'll say the patterns in the job market right now is that it is taking longer. It is taking longer to find good leads. It's taking longer to land positions. It's taking longer to get interviews. And with that, I will say, kind of plug for the resume piece. If you know that there is even potential for a gap to happen, or you're about to enter a gap, do not wait to update your resume. Go ahead and get your resume in good order now, because it is likely going to take some time before you land the role that you want, or even, land a role that's going to, get you tied over into, where you really want to be. So that is one pattern that is really unfortunate, that I'm seeing right now. And I think another one is that, some people are thinking that they have to put their gap on, their resume. In some cases, it's like, yeah, put it on there. And for others, it's like, you don't have to. And I think sometimes it depends on the person. Like if I get a client that comes to me and they have multiple gaps throughout their resume, or it's a case where, like, let's say they've pivoted and they've had different types of roles throughout the year, then I may suggest, hey, let's revamp your resume altogether and maybe even look at a different um, format. I'm also seeing and hearing from clients about kind of really being ghosted from, different positions, or being ghosted from
Wow.
recruiters. You pursue these roles and, recruiters reach out to you, whether it's, hey, you have your information on LinkedIn, you have your information on Indeed. You reach out to them, regarding a role that they post, and, you talk about it, you go back and forth, and you may apply for the role, or they invite you to apply for the role, and then you don't hear anything back. And this is definitely not the case across the board, but I'm hearing more and more of that. And I think that one of the reasons is we're seeing, either companies cutting back, laying off, recruiters and HR get hit really hard with that. So a lot of times
Yeah.
they are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
They have, way more requirements on their desk than they can keep up with. And it's not to make an excuse, but it is to set a realistic expectation of, you are trying to get through to someone who is slammed,
That's
and
true.
maybe they had all intentions of getting back to you. So one thing that you may have to do, especially if you are a person that is, experiencing a gap and you haven't heard back. Look, beat them to it. Follow up. Continue
Yeah.
to follow up. Make it easier for them to look, find your name, find your credentials. So I want to also kind of, put in the plug that it's not just it's not just a resume. Make sure it's easy for people to find you, whether it's through like, hey, you have your LinkedIn updated, you have your resume ready to send people, because if someone reaches out to you and asks for your resume, you don't want to say, hey, let me get back to you. No, you want to have it ready to send. So I know I'm kind of getting I'm getting off, because I'm thinking about, a couple different things, and I think thinking about the patterns that I'm seeing in some of the, workarounds, or even some of the things that I tell, clients to do to, hey, one way to get around this is to do this and to do that.
Can lack of confidence show up in a resume? Like, I know, like, to your point, oftentimes with these jobs, there's lots of people applying and you may not get
Mhm.
to talk to a person. But have you ever seen where a resume kind of read like the person didn't have had a lack of confidence, or they weren't really confident in their next role? And how does that kind of play out?
Absolutely. I see the confidence piece show up a lot when I look at resumes. So let's say, for example, if someone comes to me and they're ready for their next role, whether it's they're experiencing a gap or they're just ready, to move on to something different. I want to know, of course, where they are and where they're trying to get to. And first thing, if they don't even have their current job on their resume, it's like, okay, well, I already know that there's a lot missing here. In terms
Mm,
of what even, help contribute to you getting the role that you have and what you've done in this role. So a lot of times, people may tend to be modest, and I do see this, more so in women. We tend to be modest
hmm.
when it
Yep.
comes to our resume. And it's like, yeah, when I start to ask the questions, about like, hey, do you have any metrics to show? Like, when it comes to, if you're a program manager doing this, what about the financial management piece of this? Like, what type of budgets did you manage?
Yeah.
What type of stakeholders did you work with? And you don't
Yeah.
see any of this on their resume. And it's like, no, these are the things that you have to pull out. You have to show your scope of work. You have to show what you have proven and what you've demonstrated, and a lot of times that is missing. It tends to be the bulleted list that was just in the job requisition, not all the things that you have done in addition to what was in that job requisition. So I like to be, forward facing on the business value piece when it comes to a resume. A lot of times when a recruiter looks at your resume, you have 8 seconds to get
Oh,
their
wow.
attention.
Just eight?
8 seconds. Yeah, it is not a lot. I mean, because when you think about, a job is posted, there are
Volume.
hundreds of people that apply. And not to mention even how many may get weeded out from an applicant tracking system if your
That's
resume is
true.
not in the right format.
Hmm.
So getting through the applicant tracking system filters, making it in front of the recruiter, getting their attention so that they actually feel, confident enough in your resume to forward on to the hiring manager. You do not have a lot of time, kind of someone looking at your resume to get their attention that, hey, I'm going to make it to the pile for the interview.
But how
So
do
you
you then? 8 seconds? How am I getting somebody's attention in eight?
a
Like,
strong a strong professional summary. I tell people
okay.
all the time, start out strong. Your resume
Okay.
has to speak for you before you can speak for yourself. If you are starting out with a weak objective statement, which you should not have anymore anyway. My objective is to obtain said role.
Mm.
Yeah, we don't want to hear that. We want to hear what you have proven, abilities to do. We want to see what your expertise is. And, even further, if you have specific, key contributions over the years, I want you to lead with that. That's what I'm going to lead with in your resume revamp.
Mm, that
So,
makes sense. So then what do you see particularly that, well, or besides the objective, what are some other things you think people should just absolutely avoid when doing their resume, like terminology or things that may be old that we're used to doing from back in the day?
well, your address. A lot of people still put their address on their resume, and you do not have to do that. You're just taking up space. You're really just taking up space. You do look,
You know what? I'm
name.
laughing. My address might be on mine. Let me
Yeah,
go check.
And I know sometimes with, well, even federal resumes have changed because I know the recent
Yeah.
requirement now is down to 2 pages.
Uh-huh.
So that has even changed over the years. But when I tell you name, email, phone number, and then get to who you are,
That's good.
a lot of the taking up space and some of the people now that leverage Canva to create their resumes because they want a
Mm,
visually appealing resume. Wrong. Don't do it. When I
really?
tell you your picture does not belong on your resume, at least not a resume that
That
you
makes
are
sense.
going to apply to a job for. So, applicant tracking systems look for plain text. That's how they pull
Mm,
words. That's how they pull and match what's on your resume to what the requirements are for the job. So, if you create something in Canva, and Canva is largely images and graphics, then your resume is likely going to show up as a picture when you apply to a job.
Wow.
So a lot of times you have that pretty resume that you submit and like, hey, I'm not getting any leads. I know, my resume is sharp. It looks good. It has in all the things. It's because the applicant tracking system cannot read your resume.
Isn't that something? And I've never created a resume in Canva, but I know that's very popular.
It is. It is very popular.
Wow. Okay, so that's not a good thing. Now I know this.
It's not a good thing. If you want to have that pretty resume, something visually appealing or even some type of infographic resume, take it in when you do the interview. Take it in to introduce yourself and, make yourself stand apart when you go to do the interview. But when you apply for the job, your resume needs to be created in Microsoft Word, PDF it, and that's what you use to apply for the job.
Okay, cool. That's really good advice. Welcome to The Climb, a space designed just for women of color who desire managerial, leadership, and even C-suite positions. To achieve this level of success in your career, you need a trusted community that will embrace you while helping you to navigate to your highest career goals. Join The Climb for free. We offer the following resources: The Climb Podcast, Standing on Her Shoulders Leadership Development Program, Women of Color Coaching Network, the Boardroom Training Program, and the Climb Newsletter. Go to www.the-climb.org and click the button Become a Member, and we will keep you updated with our simple and fun newsletter and events that we have coming up soon. You don't want to miss it. Go to www.the-climb.org. See you soon. So what do you think, or what do you know, not think, I'm thinking, what do you know are some concerns that recruiters have when they see some resumes, besides the fact that red flag, don't put your picture, that's the PSA for the day, no pictures on resumes. What are some other things that can become red flags on your resume when you're going back into the workplace?
I think red flags overall. So I know one thing that used to be taboo was gaps on your resume. I would say since the pandemic, you have a little bit more grace and tolerance for gaps because, a lot changed for everyone when the pandemic hit. And people have experienced some differences in their career since the pandemic. But I think, anything dating pre 2020, and there are, gaps, I definitely think a recruiter or a hiring manager would see, okay, this is not something that has just happened since the pandemic. This is something that's happened throughout their career. So they may see it as a red flag. If you decided to start a business and whether, you started one when you experienced a gap, putting your business on your resume could be a red flag.
Really?
Yeah, it could. And I tell people, maybe not list yourself as like a CEO or a founder. Maybe like, hey, you're the manager, you're the operations director, whatever, but give yourself a different title other than CEO and founder, because they're going to look at that. And if they hire you, it's like, hey, are you going to have conflicting interests or even, are you going to be fully dedicated to this if we, hire you for this job?
I had never considered that, but that makes all the sense in the world, because I think the same thing. If you're a CEO, you have your own company. Okay, are you going to be like in the middle of the day taking meetings for your own company, or are you taking meetings for us? That makes a lot of sense. So I guess if you wanted to highlight it, like I have my board, I guess it'd be under like volunteer, maybe experience.
You could put it under something different. Like, you can definitely, it's a way to put it in there, but not make it so obvious. Like, you definitely don't want to lead with that. Or like I said, if you do, definitely give yourself a different title.
That's good. Because to your point, a part of we see now the number, the 500,000 people who left the workforce, some of those women who left during the pandemic left to create their own businesses. And then last year found that they weren't sustainable. So now they're going back into the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
And I would bet that some of them put, for that gap,
Yeah.
I created this company. I'm an entrepreneur, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And I was just going to say, another way to, approach that as well is, it's not in all cases that I would recommend a functional resume, but in some cases, a functional resume is the solution to, um, disguise, an entrepreneur or better yet, entrepreneur only experience. So let's say, you have the experience of being, I always like to, leverage project manager ones because the skills are transferable. But,
Yeah.
program manager skills, cross-functional communication, financial management, stakeholder management, kind of all these things, and you got them from, running your business. Under experience, you lead with those. Like those are your headers under experience. And it's not later until, listing under previous employers under your experience. So you're leading with your experience and demonstrated, expertise under each one of those. So instead of like, hey, I work for X company, this was my title, and for these dates, you're listing what the actual skill or area of expertise is in your bullets underneath. So that's really the difference, when it comes to a functional formatted resume, and it works. Like I've had several clients to have success leveraging that when either making a pivot or even some cases for like an entrepreneur getting back into the workplace, having to do that.
Because I was going to ask you for the one-on-one. What's the difference between the CV and a functional? I don't think I've ever seen a functional resume, but that is a good way to characterize it if you're experiencing where you were for a long time, you had your own company or you're working. That is okay. Did not think about that. I'm gonna have to Google what a functional resume looks like.
Yeah, or look, one thing that I thought about is I could either, content for the newsletter that you send out. I could either send you look, hey, what's the different types of resumes,
That would be
what they
perfect.
look like. Yeah, so that look out, I can be a guest columnist.
I appreciate that because I'm like, you are dropping so many nuggets that number one, I had not thought about. And I'm not going to say that it was me, but a lot of women are like me who have been with an organization for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you pop out in this transition, you have lost the plot on how all this works. You're like, what's the difference? The types of resumes. I'm not putting my address anymore,
Yeah.
I'm not going to do my pretty Canva. These are all the things I think that sometimes we think are going to help us. And you just don't know because you have been, working and you haven't been updating your resume. So it's all like a whole new world.
And the biggest one that people, I mean, you see this on social media all the time is ChatGPT. Everybody wants you to run your resume through ChatGPT or have ChatGPT make your resume based off of whatever, position you want to apply for, this and that.
What's the downfall in that? Tell me what's the fallacy.
What people never think about and what they never talk about is you never know how many people have asked ChatGPT to do that exact same thing for that role. So what if you and 10 other resumes have the same bullets in your resume? It's obvious. It's obvious. And in most cases, like especially now, since we're used to seeing it so much, and recruiters have definitely caught game on this, and many applicant tracking systems are now, at least a little bit smarter in the sense that they can pick up where, resumes may have been created using something like Chat GPT, some, AI based resource. So, in some companies are actually having you, when you apply for a position, check and certify that you did not use AI generated software to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So not all, and this is not something that I'm seeing like across the board, but I have seen some instances of it. But the risk that, a job seeker has when leveraging ChatGPT is you just do not know how much of that exact same verbiage is on somebody else's resume.
And that's fair. That is fair. And that's one of the things I tell people: when you use AI, don't use AI as a runner. It should be a thought partner to help you work through a thing. Because I could,
Mm-hmm.
to your point, if you prompt, "Hey, I'm applying for this program manager job. Here are all the qualifications. Write me a resume." Yeah, I can see how that can be very problematic and very sticky. So how are the ways would you even recommend that a person would use AI in terms of
Mm-hmm.
resume writing? How could you use it?
Yeah, you could. So if you don't know, so let's say if you're like, hey, I haven't had to touch my resume in 10, 15 years because I've been in this role so long. If you go to something like ChatGPT to figure out, okay, what should my resume look like? Look at that just as an example. Look at those bulleted lists
To
under,
help
whether it's
you.
a position and figure out, oh yeah, I did that and plug in your expertise for that. Don't copy it word for word, but leverage it just as, this is a
That's
guide. This is how
good.
I can make it real for what I actually did. So you're
That's
leveraging it
good.
as an example, but you're rewriting it to make it real for what you did because you cannot get in an interview and talk to what ChatGPT created for you.
That is the truth. That is the truth. It
Yeah.
has to still be authentic and it has to be
Hmm.
your work in what you did. And if you embellish too much, if you let Chat GPT hype your resume up and you don't even know what those words are,
Right.
yeah, that certainly can come through on a resume very quickly.
I can.
Oh wow. So what advice then would you give people when they're trying to quote unquote reframe their resume? So if they've been out of the workforce for a long time, or they're coming back to the workforce and they've been in a job for a long time and they are trying to like spruce it up,
Hmm.
what should they be doing to try to spruce their resume up?
Yeah, so one thing is definitely to if you have like let's say you have some jobs saved, looking at what is in the requisition in terms of what the qualifications are, if there are specific buzzwords, if there's, language in there. So let's say, hey, whether the language is program management versus project management, whether it's information security or cybersecurity. If there's lingo in your resume that needs to change, make sure it is aligning with what is in the requisition.
Okay.
And that's the easiest thing to kind of start with, making sure that there's kind of a one for one in terms of, the terminology. Not to copy it all, but you do want to make sure that, oh yeah, I have this experience and I just need to make sure that it aligns to, whether this industry specific language, this company calls it something different. Um, but I'll also say too, the thing to really keep in mind when it comes to if you are wanting to revamp your resume and you have a gap, um, thinking that you have to call out that gap, you don't necessarily have to. It depends on the
Mm-hmm.
industry. Like, so I had a client who was a nurse. Her credentials were still up to date. She had kept all of her licenses and everything, everything was still good. After she had two children, and after she had each, she decided to stay at home with both. And it wasn't until both of them were in school that she decided to get back into the workforce. And once she decided that, it's like, okay, we did add stay at home mom, during that time just to show what the gap was. So it wasn't that, hey, whether it's, you know, she parted ways for specific reason, whatever,
Yeah.
but she was
Yeah.
comfortable talking to um, what that gap was. And we wrote a cover letter to go with her resume to talk to all the things that she was doing, volunteer work, and things keeping her skills fresh. In addition to being a stay at home mom, that still aligned her with being a healthcare professional. So that
Wow, that
cover
sounds
letter
awesome.
tool, it's a
Yeah,
thing.
I was just about to get there. I'm glad you said that. That was my I was like, that's my final question about cover letters.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like it's a thing of the past, but it is coming back because you can definitely leverage it to stand out amongst other candidates because everybody's not going to take the time to do it, and everyone is definitely not going to take the time to personalize it to speak to the hiring manager and what you bring to the table.
That is good. So even it sounds like even you can use that as a tool of, to your point, maybe for your entrepreneurship or your new business, you can talk about how you use that time to keep your skills sharp. So
Yeah,
you did this during that time frame or
absolutely.
something of that. But yeah, it gives you the
hmm
opportunity to, use more words.
And there was one, I want to say this was maybe 3 years ago. So on the flip side, not me being a resume writer, but like me being a hiring manager. So I'm very critical on resumes, of course,
Of course
because
you are.
because I'm a resume
Of course
writer.
you are.
And so I had to hire a position in the Northeast area of the United States. And I knew that I'm not going to say the talent in that area was scarce. I knew specifically for the area that I was looking in and what I was looking for. I was like, ugh, I think it's going to be tough. I found a diamond in the rough in the sense that this was someone who had previously worked for this company, had the background that I needed, but literally had like maybe a 7 or 8 year gap. Like just, I saw when the last time they worked, and they had shown nothing since then. And I was curious. I was like, okay, with all this experience and all the things that this person did, I was like, I've got to get them in for an interview. I'm curious. I'm not going to not give them a shot because of this gap. Like I've got to learn more. So I had the recruiter kind of do some screening, for me. And lo and behold, in the interview is where some of the like, hey, this is what I did during the gap. And I did not ask about the gap at all. I wanted to see how they were going to explain it. And even in some of um, the way that they answered some of the interview questions, they literally offered answers and demonstration of certain skills based off of not only their previous work experience, but volunteer experience and things that they had been doing while they were not working full time. So I got to
Wow.
learn more about the gap. And that's another thing that candidates can absolutely do. Don't think that you are just, I only have to leverage work examples in my interview or even on my resume. Your board service, your volunteer work, if you're an entrepreneur, other things that you're doing, absolutely. Even if you are taking coursework, if you are training, if you've completed training during your gap, whatever the case may be, let's make sure those things are on your resume. Do not feel like, hey, I can't add them. I can't add them yet. If you've done them, if those things are real, you can demonstrate them, put them on your resume
I
and
like that.
leverage that, experience, whether it's something you can speak to when you introduce yourself, whatever the case may be, let that be a part of your story and your brand and where you're trying to get to. So
I love that.
don't let the gap define you. The gap is not you. It's temporary, it's a moment in time, and you are looking to get to your next opportunity. So do not let that gap get you stuck, is essentially what I'm trying to say.
I get it. I love it. Karima, please tell the people now that they know that ChatGPT is not their friend. How do they find copies by Casey? Tell them how to find you.
So how to find me? So Copy by Casey. So I am on Instagram. You can follow me at Copy by Casey. Also, my website is KarriemaCalhoun.com. And I also have a page on LinkedIn as well, whether you find me through my name, Karriema Calhoun, or look up the Copy by Casey business page. Um, but yeah, those are different ways to find me. I have been at this for a very long time. I love to talk around this topic. And even if you have questions, want to schedule some time with me, whatever the case may be, please feel free to reach out if there are any questions and you need help along your journey.
Awesome. So guys, that's, as I say every episode, that's the pod. If you know someone who is going through a career gap and this episode resonates for you, please share, whether that's on YouTube, subscribing, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. So until next time, keep climbing, keep striving, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into the Climb Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on wherever you listen to podcasts. For updates and behind-the-scenes content, make sure you're following us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Join the Climb. Until next time, keep climbing and keep thriving, sis. See you next episode.